The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst. The situation is even worse than it seems, because if most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce, confidence in your currency would be lost, the dollar would fall, and the Western civilization with it. If the next president of the United States doesn't make the necessary policies and structural changes, sooner or later that bubble will burst.
On Thursday, El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele delivered a powerful speech while addressing the audience at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, in Washington. The annual political conference is attended by conservative activists and elected office holders across the United States and beyond. President Bukele was one of those invited to this year's conference, and his 23-minute-long address was well received by the audience. His dire warnings about the collapse of American society, the unchecked influence of global elites and billionaire lobbyists, and the impending collapse of our financial system clearly resonated with everyone present at the event. During his address, the El Salvadoran president talked about the not-so-gradual decay of our society as a whole, comparing it to the first stages of an era that led to 2 civil wars in the Central American country, the death of hundreds of thousands of citizens and displacement of millions. President Bukele warned that this could be the fate of the United States in no distant future if immediate action is not taken to right the wrong caused by the lobbying, overreaching, and greedy global elites. He particularly called out billionaire hedge fund manager George Soros for allegedly influencing elections in El Salvador, bribing judges and law enforcement agencies, and facilitating so much rot in the country just to further his ambitions. President Bukele warns that the same thing is happening in the United States and urges the audience to heed his warnings before it is too late. We will now bring you clips from the speech. But before we do, please remember to drop your comments and observations below, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks and enjoy.
The next president of the United States must not only win an election, he must have the vision, the will, and the courage to do whatever it takes. And above all, he must be able to identify the underlying forces that will conspire against him. These dark forces are already taking over your country. You may not see it yet, but it's already happening. You don't see it as clearly because people are designed to see linear changes, not exponential ones. We don't always recognize how fast a problem can multiply and spiral out of control. The problem is much like the metaphor of the boiling frog. Once the water boils, it's already too late. People fail to see these things. It's our nature. Just like the frog, people become complacent and they don't realize how bad things are getting until it's too late. Well, I know, of course, El Salvador is a lot smaller country. Setting aside the differences, there's a similarity with what is happening here in the United States. We also had many apparently isolated problems in the 60s and the 70s, and we failed to realize as a country the severity of them until it became a civil war. By the time we reacted, it was already too late. We were already boiled, like the frog. And it took us 50 years, 2 wars, 250,000 lives, and a third of our population displaced, and a near miracle to get our country back. As your friend, I want to issue this warning so you don't make the same mistakes we did in the 60s and the 70s. It is not easy to pull yourself back once you're in boiling water. In fact, all the experts said it was impossible. And besides, you don't want to wait 50 years and maybe hope for a miracle to get out of hell. You can still jump before the water boils. How many young people have you lost to the streets of Philadelphia or San Francisco, to fentanyl? Did we see these apocalyptic sights 15, 10, 5 years ago? Can you imagine how it will be in the next 5, 10, or 15 years? The same thing was happening in El Salvador. In the span of less than a decade, gangs took control of all the country and our society. They evolved into a parallel government, controlling elections and even political parties. Every aspect of the daily life of most people was controlled by the gangs. Murder capital of the world is a tragic title to hold. Getting rid of that was the bare minimum we had to achieve in order to even start thinking about rebuilding our country.
Before Bukele assumed office in 2019, El Salvador was known as the world's murder capital, with 107 homicides per 100,000 and an average of 1 killing every hour. After his election, he immediately came under the crosshairs of Western human rights activities for the very unusual tactics he used to rid the streets of violent gang members. Today, even his loudest critics grudgingly admit that his actions have functionally destroyed the criminal street gang that drove the country's astounding crime rate. But the gangs are not the only things Bukele had to fight against to take El Salvador from what it was 5 years ago to the country it is today. Bukele had to fight the problems from its roots, and according to him, Soros and his cronies played a huge part in decaying the country's systems. Here are more clips from Bukele's speech.
And it wasn't just the gangs. The corrupt system worked in tandem with the so-called international community, the NGOs, and of course the fake news, just like it happens here in the United States. Unelected bureaucrats are trying to instate public policy. Who elected them? They don't have a democratic mandate. If they want a seat in the table, they should run for office. I mean, who elected Soros to dictate public policy and laws? Why does he feel entitled to impose his agenda? Let me tell you something. Soros and his cronies hit a brick wall in El Salvador. Thank God, another glory be to him, Salvadorans are now immune to his influence. No one believes his lies anymore over there. We just had free and fair elections. And we won in a landslide with more than 84% of the vote. The global elites, they hate our success, and they fear yours. The people's free will to choose their leaders is something they despise because they cannot control that. You have experienced this firsthand here in the United States. The global elites control the mainstream media, they finance campaigns, district attorneys, to mention a few. They abuse their powers. They persecute political opponents. In El Salvador, we don't weaponize our judicial system to persecute our political opponents. A practice that may sound familiar to you, but we don't do that there. And who's the dictator? The global elites in the media. They work in conjunction, they run some stories and publish them, same pictures to reinforce their agendas. You're no strangers to that here in the United States. We deal with that in El Salvador too. That is the free press that they talk about? Please. I always criticize the defenders of institutionalism, not because I don't think strong institutions are paramount and necessary for a democracy, but because I find them very hypocritical. They don't seem to have the same standards for themselves as they are trying to impose on others. If the police was created to bring law and order, let them bring law and order. If the judicial system was created to bring justice, let them bring justice. Let them protect their purpose at all costs. Same goes with the press. Let them be free. A democracy needs a free press. But to enjoy that membership, you must adhere to your duty as a reporter. Report the facts. Don't be a puppet of those who finance you or finance the organizations that you work for. Ask yourself why this is happening, who is supporting it, and whether it's by ignorance or by choice. And fight it. Fight it with all your heart and soul, and be the beacon of hope. And be the beacon of hope that your founding fathers, with all their faults like every human being has, dreamt for your country.
In the last part of his address, President Bukele talked about the dire financial and economic situation of the United States, especially the government's reckless money printing activities. Bukele explained that the high taxes collected by the government are only an illusion to make it seem as if the taxes fund the government. Instead, the government is funded by reckless money printing, which has caused the downfall of hundreds of empires and superpowers in the past. The government is funded by money printing, President Bukele said during his speech. Paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst. If most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this, confidence in the currency would be lost, the dollar would fall, and Western civilization together with it. What are your thoughts on President Bukele's speech and warnings about the state of American society? Please drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.